Cheers.
Cheers.
Decades in the entertainment industry, do you remember what it was that made you fall in love with either television or performance?
Yes, I was 15 when I started on Street Sense. It was a CBC show. I was still in high school, and it kind of found me before I had a chance to pursue my life's passion. But what I really liked about it from the get-go is that I'm naturally curious. I love meeting people. I love studying the psychology, what makes them tick. And I found that people would tell you things with a camera pointed in their face that they wouldn't tell their best friend. And obviously the way you make the sausage has changed a lot over the years. But I loved in those early days going out with blank tapes and coming back with material. The tactile experience I really liked.
And then, at what point do you think you realized that this was going to be the thing that you were going to be able to do for life? Because, I mean, were you thinking about that at 15, like, this is my career for life? Or were you thinking that maybe you would be forced out of entertainment into something else?
I was thinking I would like it to be, but I had a very formative and memorable conversation with the registrar at Ryerson. I called and said I'd like to come and study radio and television arts, and she said, why? I said, because I've discovered that's what I love to do in life, and she said, you're doing it.
Right.
I was like, yeah, but that's why I want to study it. And she was like, don't study it. Our graduates would love to be able to have your job. So her feeling was show up early, stay late, ask questions, take criticism. So I made a conscious decision to do that at Street Sense, started field producing items, started writing the occasional script, and it's taken me a long time to figure out kind of what my corner of this universe is. And I think it's that I don't do any one thing better than anybody, but there aren't many people who do a little bit of as many different things as I do.
Right. So, I mean, do you find it hard when someone says, what do you do?
Yes. It's funny, I don't really self-identify as an actor.
Right.
What I've usually said is that I work in TV.
Right.
And the last couple of years, it's the first time in my adult life that the bulk of my income hasn't come from working in TV.
Interesting.
So for someone who's always just said that as a shorthand, I didn't really know what to do.
Right.
Content,
Right.
happy, those are ways I would describe myself. So a little bit of everything is, I guess, the most concise way of saying it.
Right. What do you remember about the creation of Trailer Park Boys, and how did you come involved? And is that still the character you get recognized for most?
I would say it depends on the age of the person who's going, oh, wait a sec. I get recognized a lot as people I'm not. Matt
Really?
Sundin or Anne Murray, like anyone blonde, Kiefer Sutherland, like anyone. Trailer Park Boys was created by my friend Mike Clattenburg, who I worked on Street Sense with. And J-Rock was a character like a bunch of guys we went to high school with. And I remember he asked me to be on the show. And I was actually in a car accident a couple of months before we started, broke my leg really badly, and called Mike and said, I can't do the show because I'm walking with a cane. And he said, well, just rock it. So I ended up having the cane in season 1 of the show because I couldn't walk without it, which kind of speaks to the spirit of the show, was bringing costumes from home and sitting on Coleman camp coolers between takes, making each other laugh. And I remember thinking it was really fun, but also thinking no one would ever watch it.
Right.
And it's inconceivable that it's traveled as far as it has and lasted as long as it has.
And why do you think that is? Why do you think it did resonate with so many people?
It was so distinctly Nova Scotian for us, comedically. It didn't occur to us that people from Alberta would find it funny. And at first we thought it must be Nova Scotians living there. There's no reason this should travel. But I think much has been written about why it resonated. My feeling is everyone knows these guys. Everyone knows a Ricky, Julian, and Bubbles. Ricky doesn't feel bad for himself, and that's a really likable quality. He has set the bar so low and has very attainable goals. That's a good way to relate to people. Watching the show makes you feel better about your own lot in life, to a degree. But I think more than any of that, they band together when external forces threaten the residents of the park.
Right.
Ricky and Leahy are like the Roadrunner and Bugs Bunny, but when there's an external force, they are tight and they're family.
Yeah.
No one calls Bubbles disparaging words that society sometimes uses. No one judges Randy and Leahy's relationship. J-Rock thought he was black. didn't act black, thought he was black, which 20 years ago, even now, is a pretty high concept notion. But he's, in the show, he's just J-Rock.
Right.
And that's kind of beautiful.
In addition to having fan bases for all of those other things individually, there are also probably some people that only know you as a podcaster. You have more than 4 million downloads for Taggart and Torrens. Is that something that you kind of expected to explode in that way? And how did the two of you conceive it?
Working on Mr. D or Trailer Park Boys or Letterkenny even, there's often months and in some cases years between shooting it and it coming out. I wanted to do something that was more immediate, and you can get feedback really the same day from people. I like this, I didn't like that. You can incorporate a character that seemed to land into the next episode or ditch it. It just seemed to be a good dumping ground for all the various creative itches I needed to scratch.
Nice.
So Jeremy Taggart was the drummer in a band called Our Lady Peace for 20 years. Like me, he started his career as a teenager. By the time he was 17, he was opening for Van Halen to 50,000 people. Unlike me, he is your friend who is a rock and roll star. So I get to ask him all the questions that I've ever wondered. What happens if there's a concert and you have a blister on your thumb?
Right.
Like, it's a little injury, it's not enough to cancel the concert. How do you do that? And a big kind of turning point for us was when we started to incorporate real things that were happening in our lives.
Right.
Loss of parents, loss of pets, kids going through issues, frustrations as a consumer. That's the stuff that people were like, yes, when you got into a bickering match with the guy at Canadian Tire, that's the stuff we love to hear.
Right.
So the best compliment we get is people say, I feel like I'm in the backseat on a road trip with the two of you.
And I mean, the fact that something was born out of essentially wanting to convey ideas, but also out of kind of a love for Canada. That's really what obviously the book is about. And then obviously I saw that wonderful documentary film that you did for CBC on the same thing. What is it about this country that makes you want to talk about it and celebrate it?
Well, it's such an interesting landmine. My kids were saying yesterday, you know how people from Sweden, you think of, well, they're blonde people. My daughter, who's 9, said, what does someone from Canada look like? And I don't think there's an answer to that.
Right.
Canada is as diverse as far as its population as it is geographically.
Yeah.
We get Banff, we get the North, we get BC, we get Newfoundland. They're all beautiful, different, and critical parts of this country. But what is the Canadian-ness? I can only speak to my experience.
Right. I listened to the book as an audio book while touring, and it is just a wonderful way to feel, as you say, the love for the country, but without sugarcoating terrible things that have happened. But it's just celebrating the Canadian-ness of what we all are.
Yeah.
Right?
And every chapter was a different province, and obviously some chapters are more thin depending on where you've traveled. Some are thicker. Nova Scotia is a thick chapter, for example, because I have more experience here. But one of the things that I like that we did is solicit contributions from people who live in these respective places at the end of each chapter for things to do in each specific place.
I love the fact that the running theme here, I think, of all of the projects that we're talking about, whether it be TV, film, live entertainment, podcasting, they're all things that you've done because you wanted to. There doesn't seem to be any kind of focus group, market research, what's going to be good for my career. It's what is going to be fun for me.
I've never given it much thought, to be honest. I realized in my early 30s, I had 2 gears, work and worry. And that is a challenge as a freelancer. You always feel like the phone will never ring again. But no one's going to step in and say, James, you should probably take a couple of weeks off. You have to fight for that time and space in your life.
Yeah.
And learning the power of the word no, it works in wonderful, magical, and mysterious ways because people aren't used to hearing it. So if someone will try to book me for something and I say, actually, no, it puts that person suddenly in a defensive position where they're like, well, what would it take to make that a yes? More freedom, more money. You have to be willing to stare down the barrel of a loaded gun and not blink, and really be okay with the outcome either way. And as I have said to you before, I have 3 criteria: fun, money, challenge. And the gigs that I do have to have 2 of them. And that lens has really served me well.
Yeah.
The definition of fun changes at different points in your life. It's not fun for me to go somewhere really far away for a short period of time. It is fun for me to bring my family. But the thing that's the most not fun is doing something that I'm not really into.
Right. And what's the worst that can happen when you say no and it stays no? You're here.
Right,
What more could you ask?
right. It's a pretty good consolation prize.
It really is.
It's harder to get me away from home. And then what a luxury and privilege. But for example, my character on Letterkenny, I love the show. I'd never played someone like a Mennonite character before. I love the people that make the show. That's the rare all 3.
Yeah.
And I'll always show up for something like that. But the idea of playing Ken, the guy who works at Legal Aid on some CTV drama,
Yeah.
I don't know.
For what purpose?
There's people that are so much better at that than me anyway.
And of course, you started your career supporting and educating people about financial literacy, and you're doing it again with
Yes.
your 2 cents. How did that come about?
Your 2 cents is made with the credit unions of Atlantic Canada. Their sole purpose is educating. I was surprised how little people know, myself included. Like, there are certain things that I wish someone had told me in my 20s that would have made a big difference now, right? I thought it would be like, which phone case should we get when we polled the audience? But they're like, what's a GIC? How do I pay down my student loan and have a savings account? It's not possible. How am I supposed to afford a house in a competitive market? Like, people want real, concrete information.
Which is terrible to think that someone else hasn't been telling them that.
Well, this is the real challenge for 20-somethings. Let me tell you about the children nowadays. We had to keep up with the Joneses.
Yeah.
They're trying to keep up with the Kardashians.
Right.
And like the Instagram FOMO, boasting, Ibiza of it all is a real pressure.
Yeah.
And it's easy for us maybe to think like, come on, why are you really threatened by that or trying to compete with that? But that's a real thing.
It's true. Like,
Because
we didn't
people
have
are
to...
only showing that part of their life.
Yeah, we didn't have to watch Cribs 24/7.
Right,
when
we did, but we didn't have to.
And that's ultimately the dream. You're getting to do what you want to do, when you want to do it, without meddling voices.
Yeah,
Living the dream.
kind of.
You are.
I mean, it also helps by keeping the bar low so you're never disappointed. But this isn't everyone's dream, but it is mine.
Yeah, well, I'm happy to be in your dream with you today, because it's my dream too.
It's a dream come true.
It is.